Okay, so this is the last video that goes toward the third exam. Do the endocrine system, and then we'll pick up with the digestive system for the fourth exam. So we've talked about the pituitary and the pineal and the thyroid and the parathyroid, the pancreas. Now, this thing doesn't show the thymus or the stomach and the intestines, but you know where those are. As I mentioned, we're going to mention the testes and ovaries kind of in passing, but right now we're going to talk about the adrenal glands. Adrenal, on the kidneys. Adrenaline is also called epinephrine. Epi on nephra also means kidneys. Weird. The adrenal glands have two layers. They have a cortex and a medulla. So a lot of the hormones are called corticoids from the cortex. This thing produces a huge number of different types of hormones. Doesn't crank out huge amounts of these because they're controlling some very specific ions and nutrients and minerals and things like that. But there's so many hormones that what we're going to talk about is the classes of hormones, the groups of hormones, rather than specific hormones. So your mineralocorticoids do kind of what it sounds like, is that they're involved with mineral control. So there's, sodium and potassium and other kinds of minerals. And because where these little particles go, water will follow, is that these are also somewhat involved in water control in the body. Because if you pull minerals back in from the kidney tubules, then water will tend to follow it back. Glucocorticoids, there's a bunch of those. A lot of the adrenal hormones have similar effects, but not as powerful as other things. Like there's a metabolic hormone that's glucocorticoid. There's a glucocorticoid that's somewhat involved in some sugar control. But the big subheading of glucocorticoids are the anti-inflammatories. If you have an inflammation problem, like like your rotator cuff is inflamed, or you've got inflammation in your ankle or whatever, is that what they may recommend is an injection of cortisone. Cortisone is an artificial anti-inflammatory. It's an artificial glucocorticoid. Cortisone corticoids. And I mentioned before, inflammations can get out of control. They can spread and become a major issue if it spreads and becomes anaphylactic shock. So you need the inflammation to happen, but you also need it to be kind of held in check. And the anti-inflammatories are very much associated with that. These also are often associated with stress reactions in your body as well, where they can be anti-stress or stress resistance. Gonadocorticoids, gonads, the sex glands, is your adrenal glands do make sex hormones. They make male hormones, they make female hormones. Is that this is why the gene for testosterone is not on the Y chromosome, because testosterone has other effects. It helps to rebuild muscle, it helps to build muscle. So you need it whether you're male or female in lots of situations. Wound healing is associated with it as well. Onset of puberty is associated with some of the gonadocorticoids. The growth spurt that boys and girls tend to go through before they officially hit puberty Some of the changes in hair growth, like in the armpits and in the groin, that isn't necessarily, that started more from the gonatocorticoids than it is the testes and ovaries, which will eventually augment what's being made. It's associated with sex drive to some extent. The estrogens, people are not quite as clear as to what exactly the estrogens are doing, but both men and women will make estrogens. It also turns out that fat cells will make estrogen as well. We'll talk about that when we, I think, talk about the skin. I think I already talked about it when I talked about women's secondary sexual characteristics. And then there's the big thing. Adrenaline, also called epinephrine. It's produced a number of different places. It's a neurotransmitter as well as a hormone. If you added up all the juice that comes out of the adrenal gland in a day, about 4/5 of it, about 80% of it would be adrenaline. I know we think about rushes of adrenaline, but adrenaline is a response to a lot of things. You do something that's somewhat stressful, you'll release some adrenaline. You have to move quickly, there's a whole bunch of small stressors that will cause adrenaline release from your adrenal glands, or epinephrine release from your adrenal glands. Famously though, this is what they call the flight or fight syndrome. Where you get surprised. In nature, that surprise often can be life-threatening. And you may need to decide very quickly whether you're gonna run like hell or whether you're gonna stand and fight. In either case, the rush of adrenaline into your system should help you do this. Your heart rate goes up, your circulation increases. Blood is diverted away from your digestive system to your muscles so that your muscles work. Your muscle efficiency is increased. Your respiratory efficiency is increased. Your reflexes actually speed up a little bit. Your sugar levels spike. More energy. It raises your blood pressure by constricting your blood vessels. And it opens up breathing tubes going down into your lungs. Again, increases respiratory efficiency. All of those, if you gotta run, it benefits that. If you gotta stand and fight, it also tamps down pain responses so that, in the midst of something, like if you're running and your muscles want to complain, you're not gonna respond as much to that. If you're picking up damage, if you're fighting for your life, you're not gonna respond as much to that. You hear stories sometimes of, like a kid, something heavy falls on a kid and a mother grabs it and lifts it off, and it's way more than a human being you would think would be able to lift. But the thing is, you're right, is that her lifting it up is probably doing a tremendous amount of damage to her muscles and possibly her joints. But she's ignoring it because of the rush of adrenaline. Your muscles are capable, if you ignore the fact that you're damaging them, your muscles are capable of a lot of power. It's just, you're gonna be recovering later from the effects. And of course, once it's over, somebody's jumped out of the closet and said boo, or a deer ran out in front of your car or whatever, once it's over, is that your adrenaline levels drop, but resetting all of those things isn't, instantaneous, and it's messy. So your heart rate, you get all worked up and your heart pounds for a while, your respiratory rate takes a while to come back down. You do eventually settle, but sometimes you gotta go past where you were and have to come back up to it. Okay, I mentioned that we were gonna just go by this, the ovaries and testes, but I'm gonna put them here because they are part of the system. And I mentioned before, the skin. The skin produces histamines, those chemicals that induce inflammation, that travel into the blood in order to get the message back. Now that's a little tricky. Because it's not really traveling through the body to go somewhere else, so maybe that counts and maybe it doesn't. But the base layers of your skin also make vitamin D, which is a chemical involved in calcium control. And that's deposited into your blood where it interacts with parathormone and other sorts of things. Now, not generally considered a hormone, more because of the way the molecule is built. But it is a secretion into the blood that has an effect elsewhere. So some people do consider the skin an endocrine gland and some people don't, because it's not officially making something that's officially called a hormone. So that's it for the endocrine system. And as I've said several times, is that this is the cutoff point for the third exam. Everything else going to be on the fourth exam.